we've obviously talked a lot about Pat McAfee's stint at ESPN since he got there. Him going there was controversial because everything he had said about ESPN, the basically the bitterness between him and ESPN when they wouldn't allow ESPN talent to appear on his show, him claiming I'll never go there, then him announcing a massive big deal with ESPN. However, since he's gone there, his shows remain pretty much the same, with Aaron Rodgers coming on saying whatever he wants, basically. A lot of controversy involved with that. However, clearly there's some people at ESPN that have a problem with him. We've seen Norby Williamson's name get thrown out there. We've seen people leak internal things. Well, something else apparently got leaked about Pat McAfee, and it was about a little bit of a feud, some bitterness going on between Pat McAfee and Stephen A. Smith. Report, ESPN's Pat McAfee and Stephen A. Smith had an explosive argument. A phone call between two of ESPN's top personalities exploded into a heated argument as the pair tried to hash out their differences. The argument got heated enough for McAfee to call Smith a motherfucker, according to the New York Post. Apparently, the argument arose over Smith's plans for a new show being produced by his company that will air on ESPN. The argument was so pronounced that Smith reportedly banned McAfee from his ESPN First Take show. The Post says after asking the pair about the argument, both denied there was any ban. So both Stephen A. Smith and Pat McAfee have come out in the aftermath of this and said, well, I don't think I'm banned. Not that I'm aware of. I still plan on appearing. Oh, no, Pat's not banned. I'm sure he'll be back. They're definitely trying to smooth things over. But this is now the second time in the past, 2 weeks, that there's been something about Stephen A. Smith and Pat McAfee. We talked about it here. Stephen A. Smith defends arguing Pat McAfee doesn't have to be as polished because he's white. The rules are different for us. Saying that Pat McAfee has it easy, that he doesn't need to be as polished, he can do whatever he wants because he's white, whereas Stephen A. Smith has it so hard because he's fucking black. I think there's a lot of truth to this. I think that Stephen A. Smith is bitter that Pat McAfee gets so much attention. I think he's been the guy at ESPN for a really long time. He's been the face of ESPN for so long, failing ESPN. And it's clear that the winds are changing. People want more content like Pat McAfee. Stephen A. Smith is trying to do a fucking podcast and do YouTube and stuff like that like Pat McAfee. I think there's a lot of bitterness between these two guys.
It just sounds and seems like sheer jealousy. I think Stephen A. Smith is severely jealous of Pat McAfee and of his success. And Stephen A. Smith, maybe Pat McAfee just does a better job than you. Maybe he's just more entertaining. Maybe he's just more raw and natural and transparent and just doesn't give a fuck, Stephen A. Smith. And maybe you're just a jealous motherfucker. That's how it seems to me.
Yeah, I think he feels like his position is threatened. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. The guy who's been the number one for so long, and now you have something like Pat McAfee coming in, and he's getting pushed everywhere. He's appearing a lot of different places on ESPN. I don't think Stephen A. Smith particularly likes it. And so it would not surprise me at all if they had this blow up in private and that they're playing nice in public. That's probably what you would expect them to do. But to me, it seems like there's a little bit too much smoke for there not to be any fire when it comes to this. Mm-hmm. You've said it many times here on this show, like Pat McAfee doesn't need ESPN. ESPN needs Pat McAfee.
Right.
So that might also be a thing that Stephen A. Smith doesn't like about it. The fact that he feels like ESPN so desperately needs him as opposed to the other way around. If Stephen A. Smith, if Stephen A. Smith leaves ESPN, how relevant is he? Shannon Sharp's got his massive fucking show that he does. Mm-hmm. Pat McAfee's got his massive show that he does.
Yep.
What happens to Stephen A. Smith if he leaves ESPN?
Yeah, dude, I think he does fall out of somewhat relevancy. Like, who... It's so hard to tell.
You know what would happen right now? If Pat McAfee got fired from ESPN for something that Aaron Rodgers said on air, he would go back and his show would be bigger than ever. He would accumulate an audience from ESPN. His show would be bigger than ever.
Yep.
Again, Shannon Sharp, massive podcast, blah, blah, blah. If Stephen A. Smith got fired from ESPN right now, you know what happened? He would be working with like CNN or Fox News or something like that. Like that's legitimately what he would probably be doing next. He would be doing a big time media outlet. That would be his next step. And I think that that's probably he probably is a little bit upset that he doesn't have some of that flexibility and that ESPN so desperately wants to turn into the Pat McAfee show all across ESPN. This is eventually, I think, push is going to come to shove here in the next year. So Pat McAfee's only been there, 9 months?
Yeah.
It hasn't even been a whole year yet, I don't think.
If ESPN is not careful, they're going to wind up losing both of these guys. If they're not careful, they're going to piss Stephen A. off enough, which, to be honest, I don't really give a fuck. I don't watch ESPN. I don't watch the Pat McAfee show on ESPN. I watch it on fucking YouTube.
I watch it on YouTube, yeah.
Yeah. So, personally, I don't give a fuck, but ESPN could be looking at a situation where Stephen A. is so fucking butthurt and jealous and bitter that he winds up leaving, or he could very well end up leaving. And Pat McAfee, he's having issues with the higher ups at Disney or ESPN, and he might just say, you know what? It was a cool run. It was a cool little experiment, but I'm done too. And ESPN is shit out of luck without Pat McAfee and Stephen A. I think Pat McAfee likes being a part of ESPN because he likes doing game day with those guys. Dude is a rock star on College Game Day.
Someone says Stephen A. Smith just released a new video about the Pat McAfee story. About his side.
His truth. He released his truth of the story.
One, I'm going to see if I can find it. You know what my guess is going to be? My guess is going to be that he's like, listen, Pat McAfee is my brother. I respect the hell out of what that man's built, what that man is doing. Do brothers fight sometimes? Yeah, we have disagreements. We have arguments. But don't for 1 second think that I don't love my brother Pat McAfee. He's one of the reasons we're number one here. That's probably what it's going to be. Let's see if
that was pretty good. That was pretty good.
I've watched way too much Stephen A. Smith in my fucking life. We'll watch a little bit of this until I can't handle it anymore.
That was printed just a couple of days ago in the New York Post, where folks were alluding to some dispute that I allegedly had with my colleague at ESPN, Mr. Pat McAfee. A few things that are incredibly important to say. Number one, there is no dispute whatsoever. Pat McAfee is my teammate. Pat McAfee and I work together at ESPN. There is no banishment from First Take or any other show. He is more than welcome to come on First Take in the future, and I'm going to be more than welcome to come on his show. I don't know how many times I have to say this, but I'm going to try this one more time, not just relying on a statement or a quote that I issued through ESPN, but I'm going to look into the cameras and say this to you nationally and globally. I root for my teammates. I root for my colleagues. I don't root against anybody. The people out there who do that are idiots. A rising tide raises all boats. If you succeed, I succeed. I cannot tell you how thankful and grateful I am.
That's essentially what you fucking said. That is like that's pretty much what you said.
It's funny because it's also like exactly what he said when he did this like 2 weeks ago when he was talking about Pat McAfee. Do you expect me to apologize for that? I wasn't talking about Pat McAfee. He's the example because they asked me about Pat McAfee being at ESPN. Let me be very, very clear where I stand. That's not about Pat McAfee. It's not about anyone white. The rules are different for us. Oh my God, look at this.
I was just about to say, Ryan, look at that fucking ad right there of that fatty
Gold Bond lotion with a fat, disgusting heifer.
Lizzo fucking advertising Gold Bond lotion. Holy shit.
Disgusting. Anyway, the rules are different for us. Any white person wants to deny that, be my guest. There's a history spanning decades that proves it's not such a thing. I was not about Pat McAfee. I was not talking about his show. I support him and his show. The more successful they are, the more successful I become. I've said it before. I'll say it again many times over. Well, whether he believes it or not, I don't even know. We've never really talked about it. I can tell you for a fact, one of the greatest things that ever happened to somebody in my position is Pat McAfee and his show coming to ESPN and them getting paid because you set the market. Well, I guess he was right. He would say it again because that's exactly what he's saying now. I absolutely think undeniably there's tension between these guys. There has to be.
Right.
But this is what you'd expect him to come out and say. Pat didn't come out as strongly. McAfee said, I got nothing but love. I think I'm still welcome on First Take. I was scheduled through football season to join Tuesdays. Hopefully next year that'll happen as well. That is the only statement from Pat McAfee. Stephen A. Smith has a diatribe and now an entire fucking video and live stream and all this other stuff. I have a feeling this is the guy with the problem, not Pat McAfee.
I agree. You think Pat McAfee gives a fuck if he's on First Take or not? You think Pat McAfee being on First Take benefits him at all? No, I doubt it. Does First Take benefit from having Pat McAfee on? 100%.
Yeah, I agree. And either way, I feel like we're going to continue to see a lot of friction between people that have been at ESPN for a long time and Pat McAfee because they don't like him there.